Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a thought-provoking show coming right up with special guest, Megan Angelo, and she's here to share with us her new book, Followers. Megan's writings have appeared in publications like the New York Times, where she helped launch city comedy coverage. Also in Glamour, where she was a contributing editor and wrote a column on women and television, and Elle, where she wrote about everything from Lauren Conrad's Instagram to NRA TV. So let's welcome to the show, Megan Angelo.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I hear it's like flying off the shelves. People are loving this book.
I'm very lucky. It's been really nice to see the response. And it's funny because the book is sort of anti-social media overall, I guess, but I'm really enjoying seeing all the people who are talking to me on social media about their reactions. So I guess social media is okay.
Well, do you know, it's interesting because your book does dive into what could be like a really dark area of social media because it's there, you know, I love how you have written and kind of crafted this book in a way that, you know, people are looking at it going, gosh, okay, that's really something that we need to kind of look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what was kind of on my mind as I wrote the book, although I was sort of focused on the characters and the story, and I don't think I realized how much of my own ambivalence about social media was in the book until I was finished it and I heard people sort of pulling those details out.
So why don't you share with us what inspired you to write this book?
Sure. So I'm a mother, and shortly after I had my first son, this would have been around 2015, I was writing in my diary and about how nice it would be for him to look back and see the stuff I've written about him. And it hit me one day that I was writing in cursive. I've always written in cursive. And I wondered if he would actually be able to read it, since cursive, as I understand it, is not being taught in many schools these days. Certainly I thought, well, my grandchildren won't be able to read it. And that moment really struck me. It really struck a chord. And I began to think that it would be really neat to write something that went into the future, but that really hinged more on those sort of cultural differences than any sort of sci-fi or dystopia. I really wanted it to feel like, you know, the things that the sort of the relationship that would exist between me and my granddaughter, where I'd be saying, well, this is what it was like in my day. And she'd be saying, well, this is what it's like now. And that is sort of where I began with the broad idea for the book.
I love how you bring that together, and gosh, you know, having children really changes perspective.
It changes everything. It changes everything from the way you wake up till the way you go to bed and everything in between. And I do mean the way, because I always knew it would be early mornings with kids, but I didn't understand that it would always be like them cannonballing onto your face at 5 o'clock in the morning. So yes, it changes a lot.
Yeah, I mean, most people just think about the diapers and the early mornings. They don't consider all the other things that come with it, but there's lots of good that does it as well. And, you know, what a legacy to leave behind for your children.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. It is kind of funny because they're so young. I have 3 kids and they're all under 5. But because I work from home, they've really absorbed a lot of what's going on. And I overheard my 5-year-old son the other day tell someone like, "Oh, my mom wrote a book and it's called Followers." And I didn't even know that he knew that. So it's very satisfying to watch.
Oh, they're paying attention for sure. You can't sneak anything by those kids.
Oh, you certainly cannot. And I'll tell you now that I know this is airing soon, and now that we're all in the house because of this pandemic, I'm really having to watch myself. There is no mental downtime. There's no time to be using adult language or anything like that. I really got to be on my Mary Poppins best right now.
Well, on your best game. And you know what, you know, during the time that we're having this, you know, this isolation and kind of this social distancing, you know, it's a great book to read because it really kind of, gosh, you're getting such like these great reviews from all these wonderful places that are saying, you know, it's a just your writing style is just so terrific. And I can really relate to that because as I was reading, I was like, wow, it really draws you in.
Thank you. Yeah, I really, I'm hard on myself as a writer. This is my first novel, and prior to that, I was a journalist for years, but my main creative writing was writing. I was always trying to write something for television or film, and it would get into various stages of development, but then it would sort of, fall off as so many things do. But when I sat down to write Followers, I could feel myself being like, okay, that's enough of hearing yourself talk and being in love with your language. Now we need some snappy dialogue. Now we need the plot to move forward. And I'm glad that it sort of worked out that way. And I had that background because it's nice to hear that people feel that the book is propulsive and stuff like that.
Well, why don't you share with us? Because we're not going to dive into the book itself and go through every little piece because, of course, I mean, it's a novel. We want people to read it. We don't do spoilers here. But why don't you share with us what you would like about your book?
Sure. So Followers has two timelines. It's set in both 2015 and 2051. And in 2015, it's about a young blogger named Orla who writes about celebrities and gets a roommate who very much wants to be a celebrity. Her name is Floss. So they sort of hatch this scheme to get Floss famous and to, have Orla ride her coattails into a writing career of bigger glory. And of course, the scheme, while successful at first, takes a very dark turn. And then in 2051, the action focuses on a woman named Marlo, who is sort of the future version of an influencer or a Kardashian or a Jenner. She's someone who lives in a closed community that's kind of like The Truman Show, if you remember that movie. She's on camera almost 24/7. And instead of having a phone like we do, where you might be picking it up many times a day and seeing what's going on, she can actually hear the feedback from her followers in her head because phones have progressed to sort of rely on brainwaves. So the journey of the book is really about finding out how all three of these women are connected and what happened to the country in between the two timelines that makes it look so different when we get to 2051.
So, with that thought, what's your feeling about technology, as you're writing this book? Because I know a lot of it hinges on that.
I have so many feelings. They're always in conflict with each other too. I mean, I was born in 1984, so I'm someone who has lived kind of half my life without a lot of technology and then half my life with a lot of technology. It's so fascinating to me, people who are not that much younger than me really can hardly even remember a time before they had the internet or a smartphone. But I can. I was an adolescent before we got. So it's this constant struggle within me. How much of the old world do I want to keep and how much of the new world do I want to implement? And I just feel ambivalent about it every single day. It's kind of this thing where I feel like I'm at a reckoning point. I'm 35 years old. Do I want to still be checking my phone 150 times a day when I'm 70? Do I still want to be on Facebook? Do I still want to be on Instagram? It's what really gets me about it is that all of these different things that have become such a big part of my day, like those social media apps and like this sort of general sense of connectivity we've all become really used to. I didn't think a lot about it when I signed up for those things. It was, oh, this new thing, Facebook at college, and I can see other kids who go to college with me. Cool. Oh, Instagram. Well, that stuff looks pretty. I'll get an account on Instagram. It's like these long-term relationships that are very intense and take up a lot of my time, and I put almost no thought into starting them.
It's so interesting because people really do have their identities wrapped up in social media. Not everybody, but a good portion of people do. And a lot of it is kind of on a slippery slope to say, because it's really kind of fake in many ways. There's not really a whole lot of authenticity that goes on with that. And it's really tough to be able to kind of swim through that and decide what's relevant and what isn't.
It is. And when I was writing the part of the book in 2051, the town that's always on camera is called Constellation. And people always say to me, oh, it's like the Truman Show, or it's like, were you thinking of reality television? I was really thinking of Instagram and like how terrible it would be if everything had to look perfect all the time, if there was nothing out of game. Because I think all the time, wow, things look so perfect on here. I can't live up to this standard. And the only way I can comfort myself is to imagine that, like, this influencer with the perfect gallery wall, or that Kardashian with the perfect outfit, has like a lot of places in their homes where laundry is piled up and the counter hasn't been wiped in 2 days. And like, that's the only way I can get through it, because if the whole world is really that perfect, I think that's just too overwhelming for all of us to absorb.
Oh, I think it would be really difficult to live in. My goodness, I like seeing things that are a little bit imperfect.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. I do like when people are sort of honest on social media. My favorite thing is when people put up like Pinterest fails, where they'll try to do a craft on Pinterest and it just comes out with like the googly eyes sliding down the face and just horrible, because that's happened to me many, many times.
Oh my God. Or the recipes. I've tried some of those and they look really great on Instagram. And then you click, or Pinterest, and you go and you check out the recipe and try it. And it's like, my God, this is the most god awful thing I've ever made.
It's so true. I have really drawn the line with a lot of that stuff, because especially with kids, there's this pressure now that every birthday party has to be a wedding level affair. It's all about the details. And so my rule for my kids' birthday parties is no details. You get what I get. I got balloons, and I got like paper plates from Party City, and that's how we did it in the 80s, and that's how we're going to do it now, and everyone's going to be okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine having that kind of pressure, not only as a parent, but as the children growing up. It's like, gosh, they're, having to live to certain levels of expectation has got to be just, exhausting.
Absolutely. My hope for my kids is that some of this stuff will have burned itself out by the time they're teenagers. And I do think some of it will, if for no other reason than because, my kids don't think anything I do is cool. So if they see me on social media, hopefully they will think it's not cool.
They're going to blaze their own trails there. Well, and so why don't we talk a little bit about your writing process? What is that like? How is it, being a mom, having 3 kids, and writing this book?
Yeah, it's very difficult. And I mean, I have been working from home since well before I had children, because, as a freelance journalist, you typically don't have an office somewhere, you work from home. So I really felt the shift when the kids came along, and I am their full-time caretaker. Um, they will occasionally go out to a babysitter's, and now school is more in the mix. My parents will help a little, but it's all very touch and go. And I've had to learn to be very nimble, learn to kind of get rid of the idea of writer's block, because if all I have on a given day is, 1 to 2 p.m., then we can't be crying about writer's block. We got to get it done. So it has really kind of taught me this guerrilla warfare style of getting things out. And it's, also sort of taught me how to use the time where I can't be writing to write. So what I mean by that is I actually have heard a writer, maybe my favorite writer of all time, Anna Quinlan, describe the same thing. But, when I'm cooking, when I'm doing laundry, when I'm driving to pick up, I'm often just letting a plot point marinate in my head, thinking about a character and what she might do in any given situation, sometimes even a situation I'm in. So I have tried as much as I can to integrate the mothering and the writing every single day. But that's not to say that I am not. I feel like the day that all three kids are in school full time, I know I'll be sad, but I will also feel like I have completed a marathon and now I'll be fine running 5Ks forever.
I bet. And who knows what you're going to write next with all that kind of time, right?
I know.
Well, and as you're doing your writing process and your characters are taking shape, do they kind of live a life of their own and you're just kind of seeing that play out, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of putting it. I do feel like they live a life of their own. Especially now that I am attempting, I've written one novel and I'm attempting another novel. And it's really fascinating to me because when I was writing scripts, I don't think there was as much room for characters to surprise you. Like when you try to write a 90-minute comedy, for example, you know where the character is starting and you outline it and you know how the character has to change by the end to make the story fit the 3-act structure. So I never really felt like characters surprised me or had room to surprise me when I was writing scripts. But now, over the course of 2 novels, I have seen the way a character can almost be like a little Frankenstein, where she gets away from me, she makes a choice, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she made this choice, and now I'm going to have to throw out the next 50 pages I had planned, but I created her, and this is the choice she's making, so I've got to go with it.
That sounds like a great adventure, that you are on with your characters, because I mean, if you're throwing out pages and really kind of restructuring how the book is coming together or just allowing it to flow, make it take you anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I am the queen of throwing out pages for many reasons. With Followers, I think I threw out probably 120 pages from the middle of the book, where I had just gotten a little too obsessed with the future and with trying to announce every single thing about what the future would look like. And my agents were kind of like, yeah, we don't need all this. It has nothing to do with the story. So a character can do that, your own sort of grandiosity can do that. But I think the good thing is, after being a journalist for so many years, I don't cling to my darlings. I'm used to being edited. I'm used to having a sentence I love chopped away or a piece killed. And so that's one part of the process that I don't really struggle with. If it has to go, I let it go.
Oh man, that is so unique, because you do, and you have such a great perspective, because you do hear authors and writers that often say, "Hey, I'm not letting anyone edit any of my content. This is mine," and it's really tough.
It's very tough. And I mean, I I think that if I had a little resume, I would put that right at the top, because it serves both parties really well. It's good for the editor because the editor doesn't have to fight with you over every little thing, but it's good for me to, typically, when I get feedback and I take notes and then I come back again, if there's something that I really don't want to change and I really make a stand about it, I don't get a lot of pushback because people know that I'm pretty judicious about that stuff.
Well, why don't you share with us the different areas that this book took place in? Because I knew it actually, one of the characters kind of grew up in an area that you grew up in.
I would love to talk about that. I've never been asked about that. So, yes, there's a couple different locations in the book. Um, Orla, who's the blogger in the 2015 storyline, lives in Chelsea, which is a neighborhood in Manhattan. And her little apartment, which is sort of the typical white walls, maple parquet floors apartment that you get right out of college when you go to New York, becomes the site of her and her roommate Floss becoming famous. Their reality show ends up being filmed there. And I actually based it on my real apartment that I lived with my friends in when I was in my 20s in Chelsea. And in fact, I was so lazy about this particular detail that I did not even change the address. So whoever is living in that apartment now, I'm sorry about that. I hope you don't feel invaded upon. But yes, Orla, you see briefly in the book, Orla does go home to Pennsylvania. And I sort of imagined her town based on the town I grew up in, which is a town called Quakertown in Bucks County. And the idea is really that it's a place that you are so close to cities, but you're not there. And you can sort of, it feels very realistic that you'd be able to get to the city and become this kind of cool city person. And it's halfway between Philly and New York, so the opportunities are endless. But I mean, I imagined Orla's upbringing to be a lot like mine, where everything does seem easy up to the point where it doesn't anymore. Because like me, she had parents who adored her and put so many resources behind her, helped her get up to New York. It wasn't a long journey for her. She did everything right in high school and college and kind of took all the steps that if you just follow these steps, you will have success up into a certain point. And she has this line that I really relate to, where she said, like, she basically thought that if you were the best writer in your high school, then, someone would give you a ribbon. And when you were grown up, you would automatically get to write a book, or, it's that mentality of sort of this sheltered upbringing where you're celebrated every step of the way for your smarts. And then you get out in the real world and nobody cares.
But what? I think that that's an important factor to look at, because it happens to a lot of us. I mean, we, we excel at in one area, we get out in the world and we learn, gosh, this is going to be really hard. I've got to do some things different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because working on followers almost became this, I guess the word would be meta experience for me, because, I'm working on this book. And it was kind of the thing that I had been working for Glamour, and I was a contract employee. And as they went through a round of budget cuts, they cut my contract. So I was laid off at Glamour. I had just had a baby. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to hold down another job with these two babies at home. I'm going to try. I'm going to write this book. But there were many days where the book wasn't going well. And you have to remember, I had already written countless scripts that sort of seemed like something would happen, and then it just goes away. And as Orla was kind of struggling with, how do I do this? How do I get to the next level? I was a little older than her, and I was really thinking, like, should I keep doing this? Should I keep investing all of this time into trying to make things happen that don't seem to want to happen? And it was a very heavy thing most days.
Yeah, I could imagine. And you know what? How authentic that is. I think that's why, there are many reasons that I believe that people are really, gravitating towards followers and really wanting to, get into the book and they can relate to it, is because of all these things.
Yes.
So, and gosh, so we've talked about your writing style. What are some of the people that have really influenced your writing?
So like I said, I love Anna Quinlan, and I love literary fiction. Contemporary literary fiction is really my favorite genre. I've read everything by Curtis Sittenfeld, everything by Jhumpa Lahiri, everything by Jennifer Close, Courtney Sullivan. I love Britt Bennett. I love Yagyasi. There's just so many great voices out there. And as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that I'm mentioning all women, which is very typical for me. I just tend to gravitate towards female authors, and I could probably count on one hand the number of male authors I read. So it's a little bit of like reverse discrimination when it comes to the broader context of the world. But I have just always been drawn to female voices in contemporary literature, and wanted very badly to try to write as well as many of these women.
So, since your book's been published, what has been one of the most surprising things for you as an author that has happened?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, the first surprise is just that it really happened. It was really a book. it was really a book all along. And I kind of can't believe that, because for so long it was just a document on my desktop. The other surprising things I would say really have to do with events being canceled because of the virus. But I mean, I'm not complaining, because my book came out in January, and there are a lot of great books out right now that are just, it's going to be so hard for them. And my heart really goes out to those authors.
Yeah, there's, it's interesting just the journey a book takes and what each author experiences as they're going through the journey. So yeah. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And, what do you want the readers to take away from your book?
I don't know that I want them to take away anything in particular, but I do think what I'm hearing is that they're kind of doing the same thing I did when I was done writing it, which is stepping back from a story in which a lot happens and there's a lot of whiplash and a lot of drama, but sort of feeling, a few minutes after they put it down, like, oh, how do I feel about technology and my use of social media, and how do I want the rest of my life to look when it comes to those things? So that's kind of an experience that readers gave to me, because I didn't know I was doing it, but it's really nice to sort of all go through it together.
Yeah, I think it's a question that comes up to many of us, especially as we get older and you have children, and you kind of look at your life and going, gosh, how much of that do I want out for everybody to see? What part of this do I keep private?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I don't put my kids on Instagram or anything like that. I share my work stuff, and they really, as everyone who's kind enough to be involved in the promotion of this book has told me, everyone wants to see your life. It has to feel personal. So I try, but as a stay-at-home mom, almost all of my life is my kids, and I don't want to put my kids on Instagram. So it's just sort of this vicious cycle.
Well, I applaud you for, making that stand and deciding how much you want to share. I mean, on your book, it says some things aren't meant to be shared. And you know what? You're right. Oh my goodness. Well, Megan, where can people connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your book?
So everyone can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Megan Angelo, and no numbers, no nothing, because I'm old enough that I guess I was like the fourth person on all of these platforms. And I also have a website, meganangelo.com, where you can read some of the other stuff that I was writing before I wrote Followers.
And so for book clubs that are interested in having followers as their next read, you also have outlines for them that they can go ahead and download and have for their book club, right?
I do. The book club kit is on there, and it's wonderful. Graydon House, my imprint, did a fantastic job with it. And I'm hearing a lot from book clubs. There's a lot of fighting about this and that, and it's wonderful. That's my greatest dream, that people would be screaming at each other over white wine about something that I came up with.
Now that's a post I want to see. Well, Megan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. I really appreciate it. I had a great time.
Well, thank you, Megan. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you. My goodness, we can't wait to see what you do next and have you back on the show. Again, if you'd like to connect with Megan and learn more about her book, you can at meganangelo.com for more information. Followers is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And of course, it's available on Kindle too. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just what moment will change your life forever. Moments with Mary Ann airs every Friday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.